In this video I try to visit all 23 stations in my local county, Oxfordshire, ideally in the fastest time possible. Seems simple enough, 23 isn't that many, is it? Well, not quite. Out of them, 4 each only receive a train every 2 hours. These 2 are disconnected from the rest, and the worst is these 4 which are only served by 1 train in the morning and 1 train in the evening. When planning my route I had to take one of these 2 trains, and as I didn't fancy getting up before 7 AM I opted to take the evening train which heads north from Oxford. This logically is a good end point, so I planned my route working backwards from there to my start point, which was to be at Henley at midday. I'll explain the rest of the route as the video progresses. But my day had to begin at Oxford, where I took the first train down to Reading, switched to a purple train, 1 stop to Twyford, then waited for the Henley branch line shuttle. The fact that Henley, along with Shiplake, are in Oxfordshire is a weird anomaly given its distance from Oxford, but nevertheless it's down to history reasons. Its rail service has always just been the Regatta line, which is a short branch off the Great Western Main Line, with 2 intermediate stations, and onward connections being southeasterly towards London. After not long my train arrived at Henley, and in the 4-minute turnaround time it has, I took a very brief look around the station before getting back on. The timings of my plan require this exact train, the 12 o'clock from Henley. At exactly 12, the doors closed and they started the timer. The train departed, we were off.
This is a Great Western Railway service to Twyford.
And after just 2 minutes we reached Shiplake, my second station. At this rate it'd be easy. I don't know much about the station other than it exists on the branch. It looked pretty nice though, and there's a clear disused platform on the other side, and there's this nice sign. It would be a while now until my next station in Oxfordshire, as I had to make an excursion through Berkshire as we crossed the River Thames, which marks the border in these areas. After Wargrave, the third station, we reached Twyford again and my first change, but it's already an annoying one. Trains on the Henley branch are well timed for the semi-fast GWR service if you're going towards Paddington, with a wait of only 3 to 4 minutes. However, I wanted to catch this service in the other direction, which after Reading calls at all stations to Dicot, some of which I need. But this required an almost half an hour wait because it's time for people getting off to switch to the Henley branch. I could have taken this Elizabeth line train to Reading, which is about 8 minutes earlier, but that wouldn't have helped, so I still need to be on the train behind after Reading. Interesting to note actually, the Elizabeth line passes tantalisingly close to Oxfordshire but never actually enters it. To add more insult to injury, the train started picking up a couple minutes delay. If delayed any more I would have been able to catch the Henley train half an hour later and still made it, saving half an hour overall. I wanted to see if it was possible, and when my train finally arrived, immediately after I got on I saw the Henley train arrive at platform 5. However, I don't think I could have made the connection, as that would have required running down platform 4 and over the footbridge, so gambling on taking that train wouldn't have paid off, as it would ruin my schedule for the rest of the day. After reaching Reading, the train waits for about 10 minutes so delays don't cascade, and they sometimes add or move units from the service here. Again, if it was slightly later though, I could have left Henley half an hour early and still been on time now, but oh well. As I was right at the front I could hear the drivers having a nice chat while we waited. We then continued along the Great Western Main Line, stopping in Tilehurst and Pangbourne, which again are in Berkshire, before finally re-entering Oxfordshire and calling at my third station, Goring and Streatley, almost half an hour after Shiplake.
This is Goring and Streatley.
Technically only the village of Goring is in Oxfordshire, as Streatley is on the other side of the river, but the station is firmly on this side. Next we have Cholsey. Cholsey? I don't know. Worth pointing out I'm not including stations on Heritage Railways, so no Cholsey Wallingford Railway, Genor Princess Risborough Railway, or the line within Didcot Railway Centre, particularly as they only run at certain points in the year. Next I reached Didcot Parkway, one of the more major stations in the county, which has a nice design and is adjacent to the aforementioned Didcot Railway Centre, where I did actually see some steam rising. Fortunately my wait here wasn't too bad, 14 minutes for the next slow train north, which also gave me enough time to go to the toilet. This is where we had to say goodbye again to the electric trains, as they never electrified the line to Oxford. The slow trains from Didcot to Oxford are usually every half an hour, usually using the line just after the fast services to and from London. 1 train every 2 hours also goes beyond Oxford as the slow service to Banbury, which I would need to get. However, while they all call it Radley and Culham, only about 1 every 2 hours calls at Appleford, and these are almost never the ones that go to Banbury, which gave me an unavoidable hour-long wait between the two.
The
So yeah, we call it Appleford, which is a pretty weird, underdeveloped and underused station. Then Culham, which isn't much further, but is a nice looking station and also has Culham Science Centre, which has nuclear fusion under development. And Radley, which is the most significant of the three, serving the largest neighbourhood. I get to Oxford at 13:52, where I have to wait for the 14:52 to Banbury. This is now my 9th out of 23 stations after about 2 hours. Oxford, of course, is the main hub for services in Oxfordshire, and my nearest station, although I'm not ready to go home yet. I spent the hour getting lunch and just waiting around at the station. Then I finally got the slow Banbury train, which gets me Tackley and Hayford, slightly more awkward stations, but they look nice and I'd like to visit them at some point.
This is a Great Western Railway service to Banbury.
Then, just before the line joins with the Chiltern Main Line, we see it on this cool viaduct which just looks nice as we fly past. We also stop at King Sutton, however that isn't actually in Oxfordshire, it's in Northamptonshire, actually the least used in that county, however the border is only about 300 metres away and after it Banbury is back in Oxfordshire. We've now entered the Chiltern Railways portion of the county, so in order to go down to Bicester I need to wait for the next Chiltern train towards Marylebone. These are every half an hour, which is decent. One train every 2 hours also stops at King Sutton, but again I don't need to worry about that because it's not in Oxfordshire and I've already stopped there anyway. Banbury is the third larger hub station in Oxfordshire, as it's the junction for the Chiltern Main Line and line to Oxford, as well as having services to Birmingham. When the train arrived I was disappointed to find it was a Class 165. Unusual as the Birmingham to Marylebone services are usually the much nicer Class 168 or sometimes loco stock, but after a short 12-minute hop on this service we got to Bicester North at 15:53, where I then planned to walk to Bicester Village station. I could have gone via the Hadlam and Tame Parkway station, but the timings between the hourly Oxford and hourly Birmingham trains that stopped there didn't line up well, and I didn't need to visit the station, but it is worth noting that Tame is in Oxfordshire. Before leaving Bicester North Station I did see this Mark 5A set come through and park the siding to the north, which was cool. I could have taken the shuttle bus, but there wasn't much point given I think it cost money and I had 15 minutes until the Oxford train I needed at 16:40 anyway. Google Maps thinks it's a 21-minute walk. It took me just 15, getting there at 16:25, so plenty of time to spare. There was one at 16:20 I could have made by running, but I needed a train that stopped at Islip, which only the 16:40 did, as it gets another annoying service of every 2 hours again. This time it was a nice long Class 168, but weirdly on the back it said it was an East-West Rail test train, which it wasn't. It was in passenger service and had come from Marylebone. East-West Rail test trains are running, they still haven't got round to opening the line yet. In fact, the train behind was actually a GWR IUT test train that came from Milton Keynes and was going all the way down to Paddington, and I did see it pass through in Oxford on the fast lines later on. My train though indeed stopped at Islip.
The next station is Oxford Parkway.
And then Oxford Parkway, now on 16 out of 23 stations and approaching the home stretch as I had just one more train to catch at Oxford, the Finstock Flyer at 17:24, which would get me to all my remaining stations, although I had another 25-minute wait for it at Oxford. Except it was at this point checking my phone that I found out the 17:24 Finstock Flyer to Evesham had been cancelled. Ah, this was not good. This was the only train to stop at 4 of the stations I needed, but by leaving it till last I had risked it getting cancelled and having wasted my whole day. Apparently it was due to more rolling stock needing maintenance than usual, which I guess is a valid reason, but it's still annoying. I knew it was a possibility it would get cancelled. It's an easy one for them to cancel because they don't want to run it in the first place, as discussed in this video I made about them previously. I had also seen that it happened the day before as well for the same reason, but I didn't know today's was cancelled until this point. I got to Oxford to find, yes, it was definitely cancelled, and chaos began to ensue. It was now peak times and Oxford station was getting pretty busy. You can tell as such when a northbound train departs the southbound platform at the same time that a southbound train departs the northbound platform. I did stick around because I didn't want to give up that easily, and I was wondering whether the train was still going to turn up having come from Dicot and now be out of service, but it didn't. Instead, however, some good news did come.
Combe, Finstock, Charlie, Ascot, Richard, Shipton, Kingham, Moormarsh.
They were stopping the Malden train afterwards at the stations instead. This did make sense. They are legally obligated to serve the station or provide alternative transport, but this was good news and a surprise to me. I wasn't going to be as fast as planned, but I still was going to complete it. Plus, the silver lining is that I got to be an IUT that started from London stopping at these stations rather than the usual turbo. So after a lot more waiting, almost an hour after I got there, the train arrived. Now this train was very busy. Very busy. There was just 5 carriages, which is not great for a peak service heading away from London. There wasn't much I could film, especially as it was now dark, but I could count down the stations, as we first stopped at Banbury, where I had to briefly get out to let people off. Unlike the rest of the stations on this line, the platforms at the parliamentary stations can only fit about 2 carriages. So for the IET, only the doors in coach C, the back of coach B, and the front of coach D were being used, but I made sure to be at one of them. We stopped at Combe. No one got off, perhaps unsurprisingly. The lighting here seems kind of weird, don't you think? Then came Finstock, the least used station in Oxfordshire. Again, no one came off except the guard who was taking care of the doors. Now just 4 more stations to go. Due to these extra stops and the busyness of the train, it was getting quite delayed, but at this point I didn't care. Then Charlbury, a regular stop, so people did actually get off, and the train was now still busy but not over full. Followed by Ascot under Twford, again no one, and Shipton, where a couple people did actually get off. And finally, to throw one more obstacle, just at this point my phone ran out of power from all the filming. I should have got a charger, but I didn't think to. So I had to use the spare old phone I was using for the timer to film the last few clips, which did mean I couldn't film myself stopping the timer, but I did stop it just after stepping onto the platform of Kingham. It was wet, dark, and a bit chaotic, but luckily even though my train was late, there was a train in the other direction which was also a couple minutes late, which I managed to switch to almost immediately and head back to Oxford, which was nice. This one being 9 carriages and much emptier, I pretty much had a carriage to myself. Anyway, to debrief, my final time was 6 hours, 27 minutes and 30 seconds, reaching Kingham at 18:27, which sounds like a lot, but it isn't too bad actually. Had the Finstock flyer not been cancelled and remained on time, it should have got to Kingham at exactly 6 o'clock, so my time would have been bang on 6 hours. This isn't quite the fastest time possible though. When I first planned the route, I simply manually looked at train times and found a route that worked, and landed on the one that I did. Later my dad and I, with help from AI, created a program which after some trial and error eventually could calculate the best routes for us by analysing a full download of the timetable. The route I came up with and decided to go ahead with happened to be its 3rd fastest anyway, but the 2 faster ones were similar. The fastest starts with the second half of my route, beginning with the train I was on from Tackley at 15:01, then after Kingham heads back down to Oxford, then Didcot, and finish at Henley at 20:37, taking 5 hours and 36 minutes. The other one is similar, except it starts at Bicester North 4 minutes earlier at 14:57, goes to Banbury first, down to Oxford, then doubles back at Bicester Village to be on the Islip train, then the same after, so it takes 4 minutes longer. I didn't do one of these because I thought they finished too late in the day. For most of the trip it would be dark and I wasn't that bothered about being the theoretical fastest anyway. Interesting to note though, if I had used this route, the cancellation of the Finstock flyer wouldn't have mattered, as I still could have caught the right train back to Oxford afterwards. However, as that was also late, I may have missed a connection to the slow train at Oxford. For tickets, I mostly relied on the Oxfordshire Day Ranger ticket, which I actually didn't know existed until after I started planning this video. It's valid for unlimited travel along the whole Cherwell Valley line from Dicot through Oxford up to Banbury, as well as on the Cotswold line up to Moulton Marsh, which is actually outside of Oxfordshire and gets you down to Reading on the Great Western Main Line. This includes 5 stations which aren't in Oxfordshire, including Reading and King Sutton. However, not included are Henley and Shiplake, which I guess makes sense as they're on their own little branch line and part of their own Thames Valley Rover ticket, as well as any of Chiltern's lines, so no Oxford Parkway, Islip, Bicester Village or North, which is a shame. Although I believe when the line to Bicester Village was still the first Great Western line to Bicester Town, it was part of it, so clearly it's just a GWR thing, although I think it's also valid on cross-country services. Anyway, to cover the other sections I got a simple return from Reading to Henley, and singles from Banbury to Bicester North and Bicester Village to Oxford. I've been thinking about how many counties you could do a visiting all stations challenge with and how easy or hard they might be. Ranking all the English counties by number of stations, as of spring 2026, Oxfordshire is 28th. Greater London is obviously the most with 333, not even including the Tube, and it would be impossible to do all, but probably each borough on its own would work. The second most is Kent. I'm not quite sure, it might be possible, but it's still quite a few, and Greater Manchester with 91 and so on. It's probably possible to do most, especially with those less than about 50, although there may be rare cases where there are parliamentary stations which would be incompatible with another. For example, I believe Norfolk has both a station only served occasionally on a weekday and another only served on a Saturday, so you can't get both on the same day. But yeah, visiting every station in Rutland looks the hardest to me, maybe just about manageable. The point of this video is really just for me to have and document a fun day out. It also shows the current state of rail in Oxfordshire, which isn't terrible, but there's room for a lot more, and there are some plans for the future which may someday materialise. But thanks for watching, especially if you stayed to the end. Consider subscribing for more in the future.